Hello everyone, I'm your host Myra Abid, and today we need to talk about something that should concern every educator: the glaring gap between what research tells us about effective policy making and what actually happens in our school. Here's a question: when was the last time you or your students were genuinely consulted before a major education policy was implemented? If you're scratching your head, you're not alone, and that's exactly the problem. Let me share something that should alarm us all. Alison Cook and Sather wrote in 2002 that there's something fundamentally amiss about building and rebuilding an entire system without consulting at any point those it is ostensibly designed to serve. That was over 20 years ago, folks. Yet, here we are in 2025, still fighting the same battle. The research is crystal clear. Student voice, defined as collaborative decision making and feedback on school and pedagogy, isn't just nice to have, it's essential. When students participate meaningfully in shaping their educational experiences, they become more engaged, motivated, and successful. This isn't speculation, it's documented across decades of research. But here's the reality: despite this evidence, students remain largely absent from policy conversation. A recent systematic review by Schaffer and colleagues found that most research on student voice falls into the category of passive student voice. Researchers extract students' perspective, but those insights rarely translate into actual policy change. Nicholas and Berliner described what they call the great gap between educational research and its influence on society. They've documented 5 critical areas from early childhood education to class size, where we have overwhelming evidence about what works, yet policies continue to ignore the evidence. Take high stakes testing. We know these tests correlate more strongly with students' socioeconomic status than actual learning. We know they create anxiety, narrow curriculum, and incentivize cheating. Students tell us this repeatedly when researchers ask. Yet, testing regimes persist and expand. Why? Because, as Nicholas and Berliner point out, American society simply does not value the educational enterprise, the value or worth of public school students, or the professionalism of teachers. The policies governing your classrooms aren't primarily driven by research or student needs. They're driven by political agendas and economic interest. When Race to the Top required value-added models for teacher evaluation, did anyone ask teachers if this was a sound practice? Did anyone consult students about high-pressure environments affected learning? The answer is simply no. Economists promoted VAMs despite the educational psychologists' warning they were unreliable. It took years of litigation to slow this flawed approach. The patterns repeat across policy domains, sadly. National standards, zero-tolerance discipline, curriculum mandates. These decisions happen in boardrooms and legislative chambers, not in conversations with students and teachers who live with the consequences. So, what do? Schaffer and colleagues found that when student voice moves from passive to active, when students become genuine partners, real transformation occurs. Students help reshape curricula, improve school climate, and influence district policies, but these remain exceptions, not the rule. Cook-Sather argues we need both the mindset changes and institutional structural changes. We must authorize student perspective. Recognize that students have legitimate knowledge about their learning and deserve a seat at the decision-making table. Colleagues, here's my warning. Every time a policy lands on your desk without your input or your students' input, recognize it for what it is: a failure of democratic education. Every time you implement a program that research shows doesn't work, you're witnessing politics triumph over professionalism. But here's my challenge. Within your sphere of influence, your classroom, your team, your building, create space for authentic student voice. Partner with students. Co-research with them. Let the insights shape your practice. Document what happens. Reflect on it. Share it. Build evidence that might shift the larger policy landscape. If we don't advocate for student and teacher voice in policy making, no one else will. The research is on our side. Now we need courage to act on it. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep questioning, keep advocating, and keep listening to your students. Thank you.